We are ready. Madam Nelima.
Yes,
Teacher
please.
Beatrice.
Hello, morning.
Good morning, dear. So, you're doing the screen work. You're calling that. Let someone pray for us. Hello.
Charity, pray. The girls are muted. You need to unmute them.
Okay, humble yourselves for prayer. Heavenly Father, King of glory, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for these lessons that you enable us to have. We ask you that as we are going to have this history lesson, may you give us knowledge and wisdom to understand what is going to be taught to us. May you give us good connection and good network. May you bless our teachers as they teach us. May you help us to be active and to participate fully in this lesson. Bless this lesson that it may be a success. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Welcome.
Okay. Do you see something shared on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Teacher Beatrice, I request that you take over.
Okay, thank you.
Mm.
You're welcome, girls. Everybody on board is most welcome. Girls, we have some announcements to make. Make sure you don't share your mic where you are at home. Do not give non-Gaza people to share that mic because they bring interruptions. 2, you only put up your hand when we need your contribution. If you've not had anything to say, please keep your hand lowered. Don't keep those hands hanging. And also, make sure you only respond when you are picked on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
And keep adding your streams. Add your streams alongside your name. I can see Unia has no stream. Please do that. Otherwise, you may be thrown out. So our area of study today, girls, is the Luo migration. When we began this term, or when we began our online studies, we said our chapter is migration and settlement into East Africa. We looked at the introduction, then we singled out the 3 big migrations into East Africa. That is Bantu, Luo, and Ngoni. So far, we've covered the Bantu migration. So after Bantu migration, we are going to another migration, which is called Luo migration. And under migration of the Luo, we are going to look at items like this. 1, and I expect you to write in your notebooks now. These are the areas of study. 1, the introduction to the Luo migration. 2, reasons why they moved. 3, we shall look at how they moved and where they settled, and that is called the course. How they moved and where they settled. It is also called the course. And after that, we shall finalize with effects of their settlement into East Africa. So for now, we are going to start our introduction of the Luo migration by asking ourselves, who are the Luo and where did they come from? Ignore the second question. It's there by error. On the screen, you see who were the Luo, and then we shall look at where they came from. So we take off and we are going to request you to say something. Only 2 people will contribute to who were the Luo. If you know some answer, please, we pick on you and then you contribute as we move on. Okay, let's have Adeke Faith, Adeke unmute and submit. Okay, if you're not available, let's get Kahuga Charity. Unmute. I see hands up, but there's no response.
The girls need to unmute themselves before talking.
Please, when you hear your name, you unmute and you submit.
Teacher, may I give a response?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
The Luo are people that belong to the River Lake Nilotes, and their ancestors were mainly pastoralists, and they came from the province of Bahr el Ghazal in southern Sudan.
Oh, thank you so much. Another contribution, we close that from Musubika. Musubika Thelma, your hand is up.
Please unmute yourself, then you talk.
Musubika, unmute and submit. We remind all the girls to keep their hands lowered unless they have something to contribute. If we don't have another contribution, we move on.
Could there be another person apart from Musubika?
Abel, Regina. Abe, Regina. Can you turn your mic off, Abe, if you're not going to speak, please? We don't want to get that feedback. Thank you. Okay, girls. We move on. We are looking at who are the Luo. Please get those pens and pencils of yours ready to write in your notebooks. Then you transfer this information. So for the introduction, we look at a bigger group called the Nilotes. The Nilotes are divided into 3 big groups. There are those who are called River Lake. It means they moved and settled around the rivers and the lakes. Then there are those who are called Plain Nilotes. They settled in the plains. And then the Highland Nilotes. Now, when we look at the Luo, they fall under one big group of the Nilotes called the River Lake Nilotes. So when you see the Luo migration, another name can be the River Lake Nilotes. So the River Lake Nilotes, the Luo are a River Lake Nilote group who, like one of us told us, moved from their cradle land, which is in South Sudan, a place called Bahr el Ghazal. And they moved south along the Nile, moved southwards into Uganda. And when they entered Uganda, they also migrated through Uganda, went to Kenya, and some of them from Kenya have today settled in the northern part of Tanzania. So we get back and say the Luo are a group of people who are also called the River Lake Nilotes, who originated from Bahr el Ghazal in South Sudan, entered East Africa through Uganda. Some of them settled into Uganda, others in Kenya, and some in northern Tanzania. For your information, many scholars say that the Luo are found in Uganda and Kenya, but they don't make mention of Tanzania. So let's take it clearly that we also have some Luo who are settled in northern Tanzania around Lake Victoria in a region called Mara. So we shall get to that. But in our introduction, the Luo are what we have explained. Maybe to give some bit of examples, in Uganda, we have examples of the Luo like Acholi, who occupy districts like Gulu, Kitgum, Pader, and others. We also have another example of the Luo who are called Alur. Alur are found in West Nile. They occupy districts like Nebi and Zombo. Then around West Nile, in West Nile, around Pakwach, there is a group of the Luo who call themselves Jonam, J-O-N-A-M. They actually distinguish themselves not to be part of the Alur. However, the Alur think that Jonam are part of them. But as we speak, Jonam declare that they are independent from the Alur. So we can give these examples of the Luo, Acholi, Alur, Jonam, and Jopadola in eastern Uganda, who live in a district called Tororo. So that brings us to our introduction. And after introduction, we are going to ask ourselves, why did the Luo leave their homeland into East Africa? For that reason, we are going to ask Teacher Sally to take us through. Thank you very much, girls. And Teacher Sally, we request you take over. But excuse me, Teacher Sally.
Thank you very much, Teacher Beatrice. Maybe there is something smaller.
Teacher,
Yes.
excuse me. Teacher Sally.
Yes, please.
There's something that we need to clear in the chat.
Yes.
Somebody has registered herself or himself as Language of Faith Ministries. Please desist from that. We are going to throw you out with immediate effect. Use your name and your stream. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that is crucial. Thank you very much for such a wonderful submission, Teacher Beatrice. Just something small I wanted to emphasize. You've already explained and mentioned it, but I just wanted to emphasize say something more about the River Lake Nilotes. That why are the Luo called River Lake Nilotes? They are called River Lake Nilotes. Why? Because during their migration southwards, they kept on settling around the water bodies, especially the rivers and the lakes. That whenever they could move and then come across the water bodies, either lakes or rivers, they could settle there for some time before they could proceed. And then why did they have to love settling around the water bodies? That these people must have been fishermen. They did a lot of fishing. They ate a lot of fish to supplement on their diet. And they also preferred water bodies. Why? Because they were cattle keepers. Their animals needed water, for grazing. Thank you very much. That's just some slight submission I wanted to add on to what Teacher Beatrice had already explained. Let's now move on to my part that says the causes or the reasons for the Luo migration. And my question is, I love questions a lot. I always teach through questions. I teach in question form. And the question is, our guiding question to our subtopic is, why did the Luo migrate from their Cradleland, the so-called Bael Gazelle. Why did they have to migrate from there? What are the reasons that explain their migration and settlement elsewhere? Teacher Beatrice, you help us pick the girls and then they submit. They contribute to the question. Excuse me. Hello, teacher. Hello, teacher Beatrice.
Hello.
Do you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes, Abuze should unmute and submit.
Okay.
Abuze, are you with us?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, get on.
Yeah, give us a reason. Come again.
I want a teacher to repeat the definition of the Luo. I didn't get it well.
Yeah, you can do that in 1 minute as we move on. Abuze, do it. Can you define who the Luo were? I've given you 1 minute.
No, I wanted teacher to repeat.
To repeat, oh, you wanted the teacher to repeat the definition of the Luo?
Yes.
Okay, I will give teacher some few minutes towards the end and she will repeat it for you, right? Teacher
Okay.
Beatrice, you have some assignment, right?
Our D4 can tell us, can begin contributing towards the reasons why the Luo migrated into East Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, teacher, I have an answer. I also have a question, but first I'll give my answer. So they needed to move near water bodies for fishing and water for their cattle. Then I also read somewhere that they were agriculturalists.
Be audible enough.
Teacher, I have said they needed to move near water bodies for their fishing activities.
Yes. Do you have another point to submit?
Yes, teacher.
Yeah.
But they went to search for more land since Bael Gazelle became too small for their growth in number.
Thank you for the submission.
Teacher, I
Another
had a
person?
question.
Question?
I read somewhere that the Luo were Luo speaking people. Is that a good definition?
We shall clarify on that. We shall give teacher Beatrice a few minutes at the end of the lesson, and then she clarifies on that again. Awadifo, thank you. Teacher Beatrice, can we move on?
Yes, let's get Ahewa Cynthia to unmute and communicate. Ahewa Cynthia. Okay, if she's not available, Chirabo Pearl. Pearl, unmute.
The Luo migrated into East Africa because it had pastures for their animals.
Okay, thank you. Next person.
Chirabo Hope Eunice. Hope, are you there?
Yes, teacher, I'm here. They migrated from their cradleland because of prolonged drought.
Good. Next person.
Narule Rukia, but girls, try to explain your point a little bit when you give it. Thank you.
Okay.
Shugi? Narule, are you there?
Yes, teacher, they migrated due to wars in South Sudan.
Okay, when we talk about wars, this has to do with the insecurity. But for us girls in history, we always divide those things into two. When we talk of instability, we say internal conflicts or internal misunderstandings. Then we also say external attacks or external wars. So when we are mentioning such instabilities, let's take it from S1 that we divide our points into two. There are those which are that one which is internal amongst themselves, misunderstandings, quarreling, fighting amongst themselves. Then those which came from outside, they could have gotten attacks from their neighbors or stronger people. Thank you very much, Shugi. Our next person to contribute is Nabitaka. Jael, are you there?
Yes, teacher.
Oh, good.
They migrated.
Give us.
They migrated due to bad climate.
Due to
Bad
what?
climate? Bad climate? Bad harsh climate?
Something on that. What do you mean by bad climate? Jael.
Okay.
All right, we move on. Our next person is, hello? Somebody saying something? Okay, let's get to Edwina Banis.
Moved in search of water and pasture for their animals since due to overpopulation in their home areas, they were forced to leave their homelands in order to find land for settlement and also to graze their animals.
Oh, very good answer. Akisa Abigail, talk to us. Abby.
Diseases and epidemics like smallpox may have hit their area due to overcrowding.
Okay. We say epidemic diseases, not diseases and epidemics. Epidemic diseases like those ones you've given. Teacher Beatrice.
Can you mute yourself, our default?
After our default,
Maria.
Excuse me, teacher.
Hello.
I request that after those two,
yes,
unless if there is a different point because they are repeating same points. Yeah, after those two, then we focus on the slides. Eh?
Okay. Now, attention, girls. If your hand is still raised, we consider that you have a very different point. Can we therefore request you to lower your hands if it is not a point which is so different?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no, the girls are not contributing.
Mutamba has something to say. Could you please unmute yourself and submit? Kamuli, unmute yourself. Okay, therefore now we move to the next item and we look to the screen. Girls, can we lower hands, please? Let's lower our hands.
Yeah, and then after they have lowered their hands, we look at the screen and that we use this, what is on the screen, what they have been contributing. We shall be picking on each of them to pick one. Okay, one of them picks a point and then explains and then gives us the example. Hello, Teacher Beatrice. Hello.
Hello, I'm there, yes.
Yeah, we encourage the girls to look at the screen.
Yes.
Pick on a point, explain, and then give the example to the same point. For example, how did the population pressure or increase lead to the migration and settlement of the Luo elsewhere?
Okay, girls, please let this be got clearly that you have the ability to unmute yourselves.
Yeah.
So when we call on you, go ahead and unmute yourself. Then you submit what you have to do.
Yeah. Because
and
if they
please,
don't.
Mark, you only unmute when we have asked you to do so. Thank you very much, girls, for the cooperation. We are beginning to respond to what is on the screen, and our first volunteer is the Charity Kahuga.
Teacher, the point of famine and starvation. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Since South Sudan is a dry country, so there is like lack of enough rainfall, and since they don't have enough rainfall, the soil is not fertile enough to support plant growth, which causes famine and starvation. Yeah, so since they had that problem of famine and starvation, they were forced to migrate to look for areas with good climate and fertile soils that can support plant growth so that they can get something to eat.
Okay,
Thank
before you pick on some other person, I request to react to Charity's point, her presentation of the point. I want all of us to know that history is all about the past events. So when you're explaining your point, make sure, be mindful of the tense, that we use the past tense, we don't use the present tense. Okay, thank you, Teacher Beatrice. We can move on.
Okay, our next participant is Sophia Kamuli. Unmute and submit.
Excuse me, teacher. Teacher, there is a classmate called Naila. She's in the waiting room.
Bruno will let her in. Let's continue.
No, we shall handle.
Okay.
We are going to admit her. Go on and contribute. Sophia, we need an answer from you, please. You normally put up your hand when we pick on you. Somehow we lose you. We need your answer now. Thank you. Nachigude, please contribute. Unmute and submit. Nachigude Gladys.
Maybe the girls seem not to be knowing what we are supposed to do. We are answering the question that says, why did the Luo migrate from their cradle land, or explain the causes for the Luo migration into East Africa? And then on our screen are the points that you already mentioned earlier on. And then we want to see how people try to explain these points very well. That you pick on a point and then try to explain the point, and then you give us the example, if there is any. So we can move on, teacher.
Okay, Naguja, talk to us. Unmute and submit, Naguja. Kahuga, can you mute yourself?
Teacher,
Yes, please.
I'm going to do the point of population pressure or increase.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think due to population increase, the area where the Luo was settled in Bael Gazelle probably got overpopulated, meaning that a certain percentage of the Luo had to move to where places were less populated, like near rivers and lakes, which was still favorable to their living conditions.
Yeah, that's good. Teacher Beatrice, may I interrupt a little bit? I come in a little bit.
It's okay.
I want the girls to get to know this, that when we talk about the causes or the factors that forced any group of people to leave their cradle land to go and settle elsewhere, that these factors are divided into two. We have the push and then the pull factors. So for the history of East Africa, we go by the push factors. That we look at the problem, what was the problem in their cradle land? What forced them leave their cradle land? So as we explain the points, we keep on referring to the cradle land. What is it that was a problem back at home in their cradle land? Like the person that has talked about population pressure has tried to express herself well, showing that her point is a push factor, not a pull factor. So let's move on. We keep on referring to the homeland. What was the problem back at home that eventually forced them move away? Yes. Let's move on to point number 2.
Ndagano. Ndagano, unmute yourself.
I'll talk about search of clean water and green pasture. In South Sudan, there was prolonged drought, and when there is prolonged drought, there is like little water, and the water isn't that clean because of the dust. So they went to search for clean water, and where there is drought, there is no pasture because there is like a very dry season. So they also went to search for green pasture.
Very good. What were the pastures for? Your point is incomplete. The search
for their animals and also the clean water for their animals.
And themselves as well, right?
Yes.
Very good. Let's move on. Next person.
Kaites Best. Kaites Best, are you there?
Yes, teacher. I wanted to explain the point about prolonged drought and harsh climate.
Go ahead.
In South Sudan, there wasn't good climate. It was very harsh, and because of that climate, there was prolonged drought. So they had to decide to migrate in order to find water and pasture for their animals and themselves, and favorable climate for them to increase in their population, and so that they can help to find the clean water and pasture for themselves, for the animals, and the clean water for themselves.
Good. Next person, please.
Atwenda. Manuela. Unmute. Atwenda, unmute.
I've unmuted. I'm going to talk about the internal conflicts.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Due to the increase in the population, let me say they began arguing and having conflicts on the space they had since they had increased in population. So because now there were many, it caused conflicts and some of them had to travel.
Yeah. Is that all about internal conflicts? Internal conflicts, Teacher Beatrice told us that internal conflicts came up as a result of the misunderstandings amongst the Luo people themselves, yeah? That the misunderstandings amongst the Luo themselves might have come as a result of lack of grazing land for their animals. Then they must have also had misunderstandings over the little land, quarrels over, those minor quarrels, yeah, that eventually forced them migrate or leave their cradle land. Next person.
I'm going to request the girls to keep themselves muted until they are picked on. I don't want to call your name for indiscipline case. Can you please mute yourselves? We shall request you to unmute yourselves for solution. Thank you. You have responded. Now, somebody who is dying to talk to us is Chirabo Hope Eunice. Thank you very much, Hope.
Go ahead.
I would like to talk about external conflicts. I think in South Sudan, it was normally a war-torn area, so stronger countries would come and stronger people would come and fight, bring wars in that area. So I think the reason why they moved that was because of insecurity. So they left that country to look for, they left that area to look, they left that cradle land to look for other areas that had more security than their cradle land.
Okay, that's very good. So someone has brought in a differentiation, the difference between internal. Yes, please.
Yeah, she mentioned something in her answer that stronger countries, but I think we may be comfortable to say stronger communities or stronger tribes, but we can say, yes, stronger communities. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to also add on something on the external attacks. That the external attacks came as a result of the Luo that they were being attacked by their neighboring stronger communities, yeah? That eventually made the area insecure, and by the end of the day, the Luo had to pack up their bags and leave to other areas that were more secure or safer. And East Africa was seen as the best, safer place for them to settle. Hence their migration and settlement into East Africa. Next point.
We are going to hear from Lena. Lena, unmute.
Teacher, may I have a question?
Okay.
Where does the Jipir and Labongo fight also considered as a push factor?
Pardon?
Is the Jipir and Labongo story also considered a push factor?
I think Jipir and Labong, you're ahead. Will come in the course when we are looking at the course of the Luo migration, right? It doesn't come here, right? We shall find Jipir and Labong in the course of the Luo migration. Thank you. Next person, Teacher Beatrice.
Kahuga Charity, this time give us a good answer. Charity, are you available?
Yes,
By the way,
I wanted.
the only point we are left with on this slide is exhaustion of the soils, I think.
Charity?
Yes, sure. I wanted to contribute to the point of exhaustion of soils, but I'm not sure of my answer. I think since South Sudan had harsh climate, like there was no rainfall, and the soil barely received any water or any rain, it made the soil infertile and it got exhausted since it was also not being used, and it became unfavorable for any crop growing activity, which forced the Luo to migrate from their cradle land to look for an area that has better soils.
Oh, that's a good explanation. But one can also add in to what you've said, that the exhaustion of the soils among the Luo must have come as a result of overstocking and overgrazing of the cattle. Remember that the Luo were cattle keepers and they had a lot of cattle. So by the end of the day, it was overgrazing and overstocking that eventually led to the exhaustion of the soils. Teacher Beatrice, next person.
Okay. Now, since the points are over, we still have hands up, and now we are going to ask the girls whose hands are up to give us their contribution before we move on. So we are going to hear from the first person we are going to hear from is Arayo Jemima. Please tell us something you want to say.
Excuse me, teacher, I would like to correct Charity because I researched on this and then I found out that the Luo migrated from Southern Sudan, not South Sudan.
Okay, let me say something on this.
Arayo, thank you.
Allow me communicate this, girls. And one of the reasons why we study this kind of curriculum is listening skills. So please pay attention to what we are communicating. So let's get this clear, girls. History is written over time. That is a very strong point. History is written over a long period of time. Now, you may find some dates or some places mentioned which may not be very current. All of us should be able to know that we have two countries with the word Sudan. In the past, we had one big country called the Sudan. It was called Sudan, so big, with the capital city at Khartoum. Then later, we had a division and we now have South Sudan. So we have Sudan as a country with the capital city at Khartoum. Then we also have South Sudan with the capital city at Juba. Now, South Sudan is the immediate neighbor of Uganda in the north. So the notes you read, like I've said, history is written over time. The notes you read, which is said Southern Sudan, they were written before, or they consider the period before South Sudan came into existence. But Southern Sudan, as we speak today, is in the lower part of Sudan. So today, when we hear of Southern Sudan, it is falling in what we call South Sudan as a country. So both of you are right. South Sudan, the current country that we know, and Southern Sudan is the lower part of the whole of that big country, which was formerly existing as one. Thank you. But I wanted to add, somebody gave a point that there was no rain at all. Please, in history, we don't guarantee that there is no rain completely, that they never received any rain. There is always rain somewhere. So we say they received less rain or less rainfall. Thank you.
Okay, I've moved on to the next slide. Thank you very much, teacher, for such a wonderful explanation to the girls. Let's move on to the next slide.
But before that, people have hands up. Let's clear their views.
Okay.
And Sandra Alema.
Yeah.
Sandra, what do you say?
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
I wanted to explain the point of overgrazing.
Okay.
So I think that the Luo migrated from their homeland because they used to rear maybe cattle, and they used to make like they used to overgraze, like carry out overgrazing, and since their cattle did not have they didn't have pasture, so they had to move from their cattle land to areas around water bodies that had pasture for their animals.
Yes, is that all about your submission?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to just correct you a little bit that when you're explaining the point as overgrazing or overstocking, you don't use it in your explanation again. You break the point down in simpler words. Thank you. Let's move on.
Somebody has a question?
Yeah.
Setrai.
I want to explain the point of peer pressure.
Go ahead.
They were moving, they migrated. Okay, some of them were moving because of shortage of water, of rainfall, unfertile soils and so on. But they moved because other people are moving, so why wouldn't you move? Because of peer pressure. Your peers are moving, so why wouldn't you move? That's why some of them moved because of peer pressure.
Okay. And the point of peer pressure is also called bandwagon effect. That you do something, why? Because your friends, your relatives, right, are doing it. So there were, and that this mentality is mainly common among the youths. The youths will always keep on imitating one another. After all, so and so has done this. Why not me? So peer pressure. They moved. Why? Because of the point of peer pressure, right? Let's move on.
We see hands up. Naguja, tell us what you want to say. Okay. Hope, what do you have to say?
Teacher,
Yes.
I want to talk about the last point, the southward movement of Sahara Desert.
Yes, please.
Because the Sahara Desert is, of course, desert climate, and such climate would have been very unfavorable for the economic activities they're carrying out at that time. Yet it was they already had unfavorable climate, so they had to move southwards to where there were more lakes and rivers, so that they could be able to carry out their different economic activities like pastoralism, fishing, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
We have 2 points remaining: overflooding and overgrazing.
Lena.
Yeah, I'd like to explain the point of overflooding.
Please go ahead.
Since I think in those days sometimes months would rain a lot, so the water bodies they had would overflood, which would encroach on the little land they had, so they had to move to places which had more land.
Yeah. The explanation. Let's look at the last point of overgrazing.
Charity.
Excuse me, Chair, I have a question. Since you say that reasons for migration of Bantu and the Luo must be push factors, is love for adventure a push factor or a pull factor? Since like you want to go and see something else, isn't it a pull factor?
It can be push and pull, but we can explain it in terms of push factor, right?
Okay.
That okay, let me try to put it right. I want to just throw some little light on the point of love for adventure. That the Luo are believed to have moved away from their cradle land because of love for adventure. What is it? What is it that they wanted? That they wanted to go, they wanted to discover whatever that laid beyond their eyes, isn't it? They were tired of their cradle land every other time. So time came and they were very eager to go and discover, right? They were tired of, they were bored back at home. So they thought like they needed to go and discover more and more that lay beyond their eyes, right? So I think how to bring up love for adventure, and the people that are in this category are the youths. The youths are the ones that always want to go and discover, yeah, whatever that they have never seen. So that's the way you can bring love for adventure as a push factor.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
And finally, overgrazing. Can someone explain the point of overgrazing?
Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria Muchi.
Excuse me, teacher, I have a question. In the first slide, one of the reasons of the Luo migration was that there was barely any rain. How was there overflow?
Hello?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you be audible a little?
My question is that in the first slide, one of the reasons for migration was that there was barely any rainfall. So how was there overflooding as well?
Okay.
Remember, I want you to know about the point of overflooding, the floods, isn't it? And we very well know that the Luo are also referred to as River Lake Nilotes that kept on living around the water bodies, especially the lakes and the rivers. And then get to know that it is not true that there was no rain. There was some rain. There was some scanty rain. So sometimes whenever it could rain, what would happen? Flooding, overflooding would occur in southern Sudan, right? Sorry, in South Sudan, not southern Sudan, right? So is your point clear? That sometimes it used to rain around those water bodies, the lakes and the rivers where they used to stay, and as time went on, overflooding could occur, and this eventually forced them to migrate to other areas that were much more safer. But Teacher Beatrice, I request that you add on this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a small addition. We know that the Luo lived along, like in Sudan, there was River Nile and maybe other rivers around there. So wherever the rivers would flow from during rain seasons, they would overflood, and such would come as a negative effect on the Luo who had settled around that area. Much as they received less rainfall, the rivers would overflood from the sources wherever they came from. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe Teacher Remy has something to add.
Before Teacher Remy adds, I request that maybe she first takes the screenshots for us.
Okay.
Some screenshots. Okay, yeah. Teacher Remy, please add on something.
Yes, Madam Sally, I've taken screenshots. I have taken. I'll be forwarding to you. Now, good afternoon, girls. I have been silent, but I've been listening to all your points. Yes, the point of flooding, you all know that these were river lake nilotes. They used to settle around the lakes and the rivers. So if there were any that settled around River Nile, the river could flood. You know the effects of floods. Remember, they were pastoralists. They always wandered from one place to another as they kept their animals. So if these rivers are flooding, they are temporary structures, the temporary houses, the huts, they could be washed away by the rivers, effects of floods. And if that was the case, the only result was that they had to leave their cradle land and to settle in East Africa, where situations seemed to be a little comfortable. And before I hand over, I would like to tell the girls, when we are doing history, we should always maintain the past tense. There is a girl whose name I've forgotten, I think Charity. Charity presented using the present tense. In history, we maintain the past tense. Over to you, Madam Sally.
Thank you very much. About the point of, thank you very much for your addition. That was great. But about the point of the tense, that one is very important. Girls should know every other time that the language that we use in history is the past language, past tense. Don't use the present tense. Then the point of overgrazing, no one is bringing up the point of overgrazing. Can someone explain for us the point of overgrazing as a factor that forced the Luo eventually migrate away from their cradle land?
Okay, we have crown him.
Yeah.
Yeah. My hand was up because I had a question, but I think I can still answer that.
Speak up,
okay.
Please.
Teacher, I had a question, but I think I can still answer that. Okay, I think the overgrazing of the animals had some effects like, let's say, exhaustion of the soil. Then also the overgrazing led to there being less pasture for the animals. So I think they moved to get more pasture.
Yeah.
So can I ask my question?
Yes.
Teacher Beatrice said something about the insecurity and instability. You said the two main causes of migration were security and instability. I wanted to know if you could explain that.
Security and instability?
Insecurity and instability.
Teacher Beatrice?
She said something about those being the main 2 points.
I request Teacher Beatrice to come in. Teacher Beatrice?
Crown, let me request Crown to be clear. She's talking of instability, but I've not heard her well.
You said something about insecurity and instability being the 2 main causes of migration. If I didn't hear that.
Okay. When we were introducing our causes, we said, somebody mentioned about
I can't hear you.
We seem to have lost her. Hello, Teacher Beatrice. If we've lost her, we can move on. Hello, teacher. Okay. She was trying to sum up our default. She was trying to sum up that the major reasons or causes for the migration and settlement are as a result of instability and insecurity. So like when you, let me give you an example of insecurity, like internal and external conflicts, isn't it? That is insecurity, yeah? But actually it is also part of instability as well, because there are misunderstandings that most of the reasons for the migration and settlement of the Luo elsewhere have been categorized into insecurity and instability, right?
Can you give an example of instability?
Instability can come in external attacks, that they were being attacked by their neighbors, the neighboring communities. You get me?
I thought that's it. Insecurity.
Yeah,
instability.
Yeah, it can also act as, okay, insecurity and instability. I look at them as same words. They mean the same thing, right? What is instability to you? What is insecurity? Yes. Finally, we go back to the same point. Insecurity can be instability, yeah? But people are not safe. There is no peace in an area, right? You get me? Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the last slide. That last slide, can we have people to explain to us? Excuse me, Teacher Beatrice. Teacher Beatrice, are you there? We seem to have lost Teacher Beatrice, but can we have someone who explain? We have more 4 points here about the causes. Let's have more people to explain. I cannot read your names out because I'm sharing the screen.
So can I explain desire to settle along water bodies?
Go ahead, please.
So since the Luo had were cattle keepers, and they also were fishermen, so they desired to settle along water bodies so that they can carry out fishing, and so that they could get water for themselves and water for their animals. So that forced them to leave their Kwado land to go and look for places that are near water bodies.
So the desire to settle along the water bodies, to them, what was the importance of water to them? What did they need the water for? They needed the water for farming, that is irrigation. They needed water to graze their animals. They also needed water for themselves, for domestic use, isn't it? So they needed to settle along, the desire by the Luo to settle along the water bodies. Yeah, I think the point is very clear. Let's move on to the next point. Some other person to explain for us the desire to spread or exploit their or export their political culture organization elsewhere. Second point. What is it? The desire by the Luo to spread or export their political culture organization elsewhere. Yes?
We are being warned by Mr. Luca that it is time up.
Oh, it's time up?
Yes, it is 6 minutes past 1. May we please end the lesson? Yes.
Thank you very much. We shall continue. We shall speak on from there next time. I request someone to give us a closing prayer. Otherwise, I want to thank you, everyone in S1, for such a wonderful, active participation. No, you've participated actively in the lesson, and please, I encourage everyone to do so for better understanding. So let's have someone come up and pray for us as we crown up.